Rayan was a quiet man who loved to walk through forests and hills. People in his town called him the mountain hiker because every weekend he packed his old bag, wore his muddy boots, and disappeared into the wild paths for days. He was not rich, but he had saved some money from working in a small repair shop. He wanted a peaceful place far from noise, a place where he could stay after long hikes and rest near the fire. One day he saw a paper notice on a wall in the town square. It said, "Old cabin for sale, cheap, located in Misty Ridge Mountains." Most people laughed when they saw it. The Misty Ridge area was known for storms, wild winds, and broken paths. Many said it was haunted or cursed, but Rayan smiled when he read it. He thought it was the perfect place for peace. He asked the shopkeeper about it, but the man laughed and said, "That cabin is falling apart. Nobody wants it. You will waste your money." Rayan did not argue. He only said, "I will see it myself." The next day he packed his bag, took a map, and started his journey toward Misty Ridge. The road was long and rough. Trees stood tall on both sides, their leaves whispering in the cool wind. The path soon turned into rocky ground. After some hours he saw the old cabin standing on a small hill, surrounded by pine trees. The roof had holes, the wooden walls were gray and cracked, and one window was missing. The place looked forgotten, but Rayan felt something warm inside. He climbed the steps, which made creaking sounds under his boots. The door was half broken and hanging loose. When he pushed it, it opened with a loud squeak. Inside he found dust covering everything. A broken chair lay in one corner. A small table leaned to one side, and spider webs filled the windows. Yet the place smelled of pine wood and fresh air from the mountains. He smiled quietly. The next week Rayan bought the cabin. Everyone in town laughed at him. "You wasted your savings," said a young man at the repair shop. "That old cabin will fall on your head." Another added, "You should have bought a tent instead." Rayan only smiled and said, "I will fix it." When he went back to the cabin, he started cleaning it. He brought new wood from nearby trees, cut them with his small saw, and repaired the door and windows. He worked all day, sometimes under rain or cold wind. He cooked rice and beans on a small stove, sat near the fire, and watched the sunset through the trees. At night the forest was quiet except for the soft sound of owls. After a few days the cabin started to look better. The walls were patched and the roof had new boards. He placed a lantern inside and arranged his few things neatly. But one thing kept bothering him. There was a small door under the floor near the back wall. It was locked with a rusty chain. He had noticed it on the first day but ignored it because he wanted to finish other repairs first. One evening, while sweeping the floor, his broom hit the edge of that small door again. It made a dull metallic sound. He knelt down and touched the lock. It was old but still strong. He pulled it, but it did not move. He thought maybe it leads to a storage cellar. He decided to open it later. Days passed, and the townspeople kept teasing him whenever he came to buy supplies. "Still fixing that ghost house?" asked an old man at the store. Rayan only nodded. It will be fine soon. As he returned to the cabin that night, the wind started to howl through the mountains. Clouds covered the moon and rain began to fall. The cabin shook a little under the storm, but it stood strong. Rayan lit the fire and sat down near it. The crackling sound of the flames filled the room. He felt proud of his hard work. Then he heard a faint tapping sound. It was coming from under the floor. He stood still, listening. The sound came again, like something gently knocking from below. He looked at the small door. The lock moved a little, as if touched by wind, but there was no wind inside. He thought it must be a loose board moving because of the storm. Still, he felt uneasy. He took a candle and went closer to the door. The lock looked darker than before. He bent down and saw a small mark on it, like a strange carving. It looked like a circle with tiny lines around it. He rubbed it with his finger, and for a moment he thought it glowed faintly, but then it vanished. The rain outside grew louder. Rayan decided to ignore it and went to sleep. He told himself that the sound came from wind passing through gaps in the floor. But sleep did not come easily. All night he felt as if someone was walking slowly around the cabin. When he opened his eyes, no one was there. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sky was clear and sunlight entered through the small window. Birds sang in the trees. Rayan went outside to gather water from the stream nearby. While walking, he found footprints near the door. They were small, not like animal tracks, and they led toward the back of the cabin. He followed them, but they stopped suddenly near the old pine tree. He looked around, but there was nothing. When he went back inside, his eyes went again to the small door on the floor. Something inside him whispered that he should open it. He tried again to pull the lock, but it did not move. Then he remembered the old man who sold him the place. Maybe that man knew about it. He went back to town that afternoon and found the old seller sitting near the post office. The man looked surprised to see him. "You still living there?" he asked. "Yes," said Rayan. "I fixed most of it, but there is a locked door under the floor. Do you know what is inside?" The old man's smile faded. He looked down and said, "It was there when my father bought the cabin many years ago. He told me never to open it. He said it keeps something safe inside, something that should not be disturbed." Rayan felt curious. "Something safe? Like a box or tools?" The old man shook his head slowly. "I never asked. But strange things happened whenever someone tried to break that lock." Rayan thanked him and left. On his way back, he kept thinking about those words. The path through the forest felt quieter than before. Even the birds were silent. The air was colder, though the sun was shining. When he reached the cabin, he placed his bag on the table and looked again at the floor. The small door waited silently as if watching him. He took out his hammer and chisel. He decided he would open it no matter what was inside. His heart beat faster as he kneeled down and placed the chisel under the lock. The metal was cold to his touch. For a moment, he felt as if the cabin itself was breathing. Rayan took a deep breath, lifted the hammer, and hit the lock. The sound echoed through the cabin and out into the mountains. The chain snapped and the small door opened slightly. A rush of cold air came out from the dark space below. He bent down and looked inside. There was a staircase made of stone leading down into darkness. Rayan held his lantern tightly. He took one more deep breath, stepped forward, and opened the door fully. He started to walk down the stairs. Rayan stood at the top of the narrow stone stairs, holding his lantern in one hand. The air rising from below was cold and smelled of wet earth and old wood. For a moment he thought about closing the door and forgetting it, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He had come here to build a new life, and now he felt that the secret below the cabin was part of that life. He started walking down slowly. Each step made a soft echo in the small space. The walls on both sides were rough stone, damp with drops of water shining in the lantern light. When he reached the bottom, he found himself in a small underground room. The floor was covered with dust, and there were a few wooden boxes in one corner. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like thin curtains. He placed the lantern on a rock and opened the first box. It was empty. The second box had some old tools, rusted and broken. But when he opened the third box, he found something strange. Inside it was a small metal key wrapped in cloth. The cloth was very old and had a symbol on it, the same circle with lines that he had seen on the lock. Rayan turned the key in his hand and felt a strange warmth in his fingers. He did not understand why, but the metal felt alive, like it was pulsing slightly. He looked around the room again. There was another small door made of stone on the far wall. It had the same symbol carved into it. The key might fit there. He walked closer and tried the key. It slid in smoothly and turned with a soft click. The stone door opened inward, revealing a small passage that went deeper into the ground. The walls were darker, and the smell of the air was different now, like dry leaves and ash. He hesitated, but then he raised his lantern and walked inside. The passage was short, and soon he reached another chamber. This one was larger, with a circular floor and strange carvings on the walls. In the center stood an old wooden table covered in dust. On it lay a small leather book, its cover marked with the same circle symbol. Rayan brushed away the dust and opened the book. The pages were yellow and filled with neat handwriting. The first line said, "To the next keeper of this cabin. If you are reading this, you have opened the sealed door. Be careful what you do next." Rayan frowned. He read further. The book told a story about a group of travelers who built this cabin many years ago. They had come to the mountains not to live in peace, but to hide something. The book said they discovered a strange object deep in the forest, something that glowed and moved even without light. They called it the heart of the mountain. The travelers brought it here and hid it under the cabin, sealing it behind the stone door to keep it safe. The last line of the page said, "It protects the forest, but it must never be taken out. It sleeps below and keeps balance in the mountain." Rayan sat down and thought about what he had read. He did not believe in old tales or magic, but he could not ignore the cold air that still came from deeper inside the passage. He decided to close the stone door again, but when he turned around, he saw something that made his heart stop. The lantern light flickered, and for a moment he saw a faint glow coming from the far wall, behind a large rock. He moved closer. The glow became stronger, soft blue like moonlight under water. He placed his hand on the rock and pushed it slightly. It moved a little, revealing a small hole behind it. From inside that hole came the blue light, steady and calm. Rayan felt the same warmth again, like the air around him was alive. He thought of the book's words. It protects the forest. Maybe it was the same thing, the heart of the mountain. He wanted to see it clearly. He pushed the rock further and looked through the opening. Inside there was a crystal-like stone about the size of a football. It floated a few inches above the ground, glowing gently. The light moved inside it like slow waves of water. Rayan stared at it in silence. It was beautiful and peaceful, but something about it made his chest feel heavy. He did not touch it. He only stood there watching. Then he noticed that the air had become warmer, and the sound of wind echoed faintly through the tunnel. He took a step back. The light of the crystal changed for a second, turning from blue to white, and then back to blue. Suddenly he heard a noise from above, like the sound of the cabin door opening. He quickly turned off the lantern and waited. There were footsteps coming from upstairs. Someone was inside the cabin. He grabbed the lantern again and hurried up the stairs. When he reached the top, the cabin was empty, but the main door was wide open. The wind was blowing hard outside and the forest was darker than before. He stepped outside and looked around. There was no one. Only the trees moved in the strong wind. He closed the door and locked it. Then he sat down, thinking about what he had seen. Who had opened the door? Was it just the wind? He was not sure. That night he could not sleep. He kept hearing faint sounds like whispering coming from the floor. Once he thought he heard a voice calling his name softly, but when he sat up, everything was quiet. The lantern light flickered again, even though there was no breeze. He looked at the floor where the small door was, and for a moment, it seemed like faint blue light was glowing through the cracks. Rayan stayed awake until morning. When the sun finally rose, he felt calmer. He went outside to get fresh air. The mountains looked beautiful under the sunlight, and the forest seemed alive. Birds were flying, and the stream nearby was shining. For a moment, everything looked peaceful again, but when he turned back toward the cabin, he froze. On the wooden door of the cabin, someone had drawn the same circle symbol with lines around it. It was made with mud or maybe ash. He was sure it had not been there before. He walked closer and touched it. The symbol was fresh. Someone or something had drawn it during the night. Rayan washed it off with water, but a strange feeling stayed inside him. He remembered what the old seller had said. Strange things happened when someone tried to open the locked door. Maybe he should not have opened it. Still, he could not stop thinking about the glowing crystal. He decided to return to the underground chamber that evening. He wanted to study it more. Maybe it was a natural mineral or something valuable. He thought of showing it to someone in town, but then he remembered how everyone laughed at him. No one would believe him now. When night came, he took his lantern and went down again. The air was colder this time. The light of the lantern looked weaker. As he walked through the passage, he noticed that the carvings on the wall seemed to move slightly in the light. He reached the stone door and opened it. The blue glow was still there, shining softly behind the rock. He went closer and sat near it. The light reflected on his face. For a while, he only watched in silence. Then he noticed something new. The glow pulsed slowly, and each pulse made a faint sound like a heartbeat. He placed his hand near it, and the sound grew louder. The mountain seemed to breathe with him. Rayan felt peace and fear at the same time. He realized that whatever it was alive in some way, and the cabin had been built to protect it. The book was right. It was not just an old story. He backed away slowly and whispered, "I will not touch you." But as he turned to leave, he saw something move in the corner of the chamber. A shadow, tall and slow, sliding along the wall. It stopped near the stone table where the book lay. Rayan froze, his lantern trembling in his hand. The shadow did not have a clear shape. It was dark, but its edges shimmered like mist. Then a low sound filled the air, deep and soft, like words spoken underwater. Rayan could not understand them, but he knew the voice came from the shadow. His heart beat fast and sweat ran down his face. He stepped back, but the shadow moved toward him. The light from the lantern grew dimmer. Rayan stumbled, dropped the lantern, and the flame went out. The chamber fell into darkness except for the faint blue glow behind the rock. He turned and ran up the stairs as fast as he could. his footsteps echoing through the tunnel. When he reached the cabin, he slammed the wooden door shut and fell to the floor, breathing heavily. The cabin was silent again, but he could still hear the faint heartbeat from below the floor. Rayan woke up the next morning with heavy eyes. His head hurt and his hands were shaking. The fire in the cabin had gone cold, and the air was thick with silence. The only sound he could hear was the soft drip of water from the roof after the night's rain. For a few moments he thought everything that happened was a dream, but when he looked at the floor he knew it was real. The small door was still open and faint blue light flickered through the cracks. He stood up slowly and closed the door tightly. Then he placed a wooden chair on top of it. He wanted to keep it shut for now. The memory of the shadow made him uneasy. He could still remember the voice that spoke without words. It was not angry but sounded old, like a whisper that came from deep inside the mountain. He stepped outside to breathe fresh air. The morning sun was bright and the forest looked calm again. Birds were singing and the stream made a soft sound as it moved through the rocks. Rayan filled his jug with cold water and washed his face. He wanted to believe everything was fine, but part of him knew the mountain had changed since he opened the door. As he walked around the cabin, he saw strange marks on the trees. They were carved symbols, the same circle with lines around it. Some of them looked fresh, others old and faded. He touched one of the marks. It was cold to his hand, even though the sunlight was warm. He felt a vibration through the bark, like the tree was alive and aware. When he returned to the cabin, he saw something new on his table. The small leather book from the underground room was lying there. He was sure he had left it below, but now it was in front of him. Its cover looked clean, as if someone had wiped off the dust. He opened it carefully. The first pages were the same, but a new message had appeared on the last page. The ink was still wet. It said, "Do not fear the voice. The mountain remembers." Rayan stepped back, his mind filled with questions. Who had written it? Was it the shadow or was it something else? He did not know, but he felt that someone or something was watching him. He decided to leave the cabin for a while and go down to the nearest town. Maybe a few days away would help him think clearly. He packed his bag and locked the cabin door. As he walked down the mountain path, the forest was quiet. Too quiet. Not a single bird made a sound now. Even the wind had stopped moving the trees. After walking for almost an hour, he reached a small clearing. He stopped to rest and looked back. The cabin roof was just visible through the trees, standing lonely against the mountain sky. Suddenly he heard a noise behind him. When he turned, he saw a figure standing near the edge of the clearing. It was an old man with a long gray coat and a walking stick. The old man smiled and said, "You must be the new owner of that cabin." Rayan nodded slowly. "Yes, I bought it a few weeks ago." The old man came closer and said, "You opened the door, didn't you?" Rayan was surprised. "How do you know about that?" The man looked at the ground for a moment and then said, "Because I once lived there too. Many years ago. The cabin keeps its memory. It never forgets who touches its secret." Rayan felt his heart beat faster. "You lived there before me?" The man nodded. "I left because I could not bear the whispers. The mountain speaks to those who wake it. You must listen carefully or it will grow restless." Rayan wanted to ask more, but the old man started walking away toward the woods. Rayan followed him, calling out, "Wait, what is the thing under the cabin? What does it want?" The man stopped and said, "It does not want. It protects. The heart of the mountain keeps balance. If it stops beating, the forest will die. Do not try to move it. Keep it safe, and it will keep you safe." Then he turned and walked into the trees until he disappeared from sight. Rayan stood there for a long time, thinking about his words. He finally decided to return to the cabin. He could not leave it alone after hearing that. The forest seemed to watch him as he walked back. When he reached the door, the chair that he had placed over the small door was lying on the floor. The wooden floor looked freshly cleaned, as if someone had swept it. He slowly lifted the trapdoor and looked down. The blue light was stronger now, glowing softly like a heartbeat. He could hear it clearly this time, a deep and steady thump that echoed through the cabin floor. The sound was not frightening anymore. It felt calm, almost like music. He took the book again and sat near the fire. He began to read it from the beginning. The earlier pages described how the travelers found the glowing crystal during a storm. It had fallen from a crack in the mountain after lightning struck the rocks. They built the cabin above it to keep it safe from people who might misuse it. The book also said that the crystal's light was tied to the life of the forest. As long as it glowed, the trees would grow, the rivers would flow, and animals would live in peace. When Rayan finished reading, he felt respect for the travelers who had protected it. He decided he would take their place. He would be the new guardian of the mountain heart. That night he stayed awake, listening to the faint heartbeat below the floor. It was slow and peaceful, he whispered. I will protect you. But around midnight the wind started again. The door of the cabin rattled. Rayan looked through the window and saw mist spreading across the forest. The air grew colder, and the blue light below started to pulse faster. He opened the trapdoor slightly. The glow was bright now, almost white. He could hear soft whispers again. This time they sounded clearer. Help us, the voices said. The balance is breaking. Rayan felt a chill. He asked softly, what do you want me to do? The voices answered together. The mountain bleeds. The storm comes. He stepped outside. The sky was dark even though the moon was full. Heavy clouds were moving fast over the ridge. The trees were swaying wildly. He could hear the roar of thunder far away. He looked toward the top of the mountain and saw flashes of light, not from the sky but from the ground, as if something was glowing deep inside the rocks. The ground shook for a moment. Rayan grabbed the doorframe to keep his balance. The forest animals ran past him, escaping toward the valley. The mountain made a low rumble like it was alive. He rushed back inside and closed the door. The cabin walls trembled. The book on the table flipped open by itself. The pages turned rapidly until they stopped at one that said, When the mountain bleeds, return its light. Rayan looked toward the trapdoor. He did not understand what that meant, but he felt he had to act. He opened the trapdoor again and climbed down the stairs with the lantern. The glow of the crystal was stronger than ever. The heartbeat was loud and the ground around it was shaking. The shadow from before was gone, but the light filled the chamber with brightness. He kneeled near the crystal and saw cracks on its surface. Blue light was leaking out like liquid. He reached out his hand and said, Tell me what to do. The crystal pulsed once, and then an image flashed in his mind. He saw the forest burning, the river drying, and the trees falling. Then he saw himself placing his hands on the crystal to heal it. Rayan did not think twice. He placed both hands on it. The glow became blinding for a moment, and he felt warmth spread through his arms and chest. His heart started beating in rhythm with the crystal's pulse. The shaking stopped, and the light turned soft again. The mountain grew silent. He slowly stepped back and looked around. The cracks on the crystal were gone. It was whole again. He felt weak but peaceful. He whispered, You are safe now. When he climbed back up, the air outside was calm again. The mist was gone, and the stars were shining above the trees. The forest was alive once more. Rayan sat near the fire, breathing slowly. He looked at the book on the table. The last page had changed again. It now said, The new guardian has answered. The mountain sleeps in peace. He smiled softly and closed the book. He did not know how long he would live in this cabin, but he knew he had become part of something greater than himself. The heart of the mountain had accepted him. As he closed his eyes, he could still hear the soft heartbeat below, calm and steady like a living soul beneath the earth. Morning sunlight touched the cabin walls, making the wooden boards shine softly. Rayan opened his eyes and sat up. The air was calm, and birds were singing again. The long night was over, but his body still felt tired. He walked to the window and saw the forest full of light. Dew sparkled on the grass, and the stream below the hill was clear again. Everything looked peaceful, as if nothing strange had happened. Rayan made tea on his small stove and sat outside on the wooden steps. He sipped slowly, enjoying the quiet. He thought about the night before, about the cracks on the glowing crystal and how they had disappeared after he touched it. He remembered the feeling of warmth flowing through him, like the mountain had shared its strength with him. He was proud, but also afraid. He knew the mountain had chosen him, but he did not yet understand why. The old man's words echoed in his mind. Keep it safe, and it will keep you safe. After breakfast, Rayan decided to explore the forest again. He wanted to see if everything was really back to normal. He followed the narrow path that led deeper into the woods. The sunlight fell through the trees in golden lines, and the air smelled of pine and wet soil. For a while he felt peaceful. Then he noticed something unusual. There were stone piles placed along the path. Each pile had 3 stones stacked neatly on top of each other. He counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They continued all the way down the trail. Each one had the same circle symbol carved into the top stone. He stopped near one of them and touched the carving. It was fresh, smooth, and slightly warm. He looked around but saw no one. The forest was silent again. He whispered softly, "Who did this?" Then he heard a faint sound behind him, like leaves moving. He turned quickly and saw a figure standing far away between the trees. The person was tall and wore a cloak made of brown cloth that blended with the forest. The face was hidden under a hood. Rayan called out, "Who are you?" The figure did not move. It only raised a hand slowly and pointed toward the cabin. Then it turned and disappeared among the trees without a sound. Rayan ran after it, pushing through the bushes, but when he reached the spot, there was no one. Only the marks of footsteps on the wet ground. The same circle symbol was drawn there with sticks. He felt a chill. He decided to return to the cabin. When he reached home, he noticed something strange. The door was half open again. He was sure he had locked it before leaving. Inside, everything looked the same except the leather book. It was lying open on the table, and new words were written on the page. The ink was dark and wet. It said, "They are watching. Do not fear them. They guard the light." Rayan read it twice. He wondered if the cloaked figure was one of the watchers the message spoke of. Maybe they were protectors of the crystal, like him. He wanted to believe that they meant no harm. He decided to visit the underground chamber once more. He took his lantern and opened the small door on the floor. As he went down the stairs, the familiar cold air surrounded him again. The crystal glowed softly, steady and calm. The heartbeat sound was slower now, peaceful like the rhythm of sleep. Rayan kneeled beside it and whispered, "Are they your guardians too?" For a moment, the light inside the crystal moved in slow circles, as if answering yes. He smiled quietly. The mountain was alive and everything in it was connected. When he returned upstairs, he felt more at ease. The cabin no longer felt empty. He could sense life around him, silent but strong. He cleaned the place, cooked his meal, and repaired a broken window. The sun went down slowly behind the trees, painting the sky orange. At night, Rayan sat near the fire, reading the old book again. More pages had appeared since he last opened it. The new chapter told about the Watchers of the Forest. It said they were people who once lived in the valley below, but were chosen by the mountain to protect its heart. They did not age like others and appeared only when the balance of the forest was in danger. The words made Rayan wonder if the old man he met in the clearing was one of them. Maybe the Watchers still lived quietly among the trees, guarding the secret. He closed the book and looked at the window. A soft glow flickered outside near the tree line. It looked like a lantern moving slowly between the trees. He stood up and watched it carefully. Then he saw another light, and then a third. They moved together, circling the cabin from a distance. Rayan felt no fear this time. He stepped outside, carrying his lantern. The night air was cool, and the forest smelled fresh after the rain. The glowing lights stopped moving and stayed in place. He called out, "Are you the Watchers?" A calm voice answered from the shadows. "Yes, and so are you now, War." 3 figures stepped out from the trees. They all wore brown cloaks with hoods covering their faces. The tallest one said, "The mountain has accepted you. You have done what many could not." Rayan asked, "What do you mean?" The figure said, "When the heart cracked, it was calling for help. Only a soul with pure intent could heal it. You touched it not for power, but to protect. That is why you are the new guardian." Rayan lowered his lantern and said, "I do not understand everything yet, but I want to keep it safe." The second figure nodded. "Then you must learn. The mountain is alive. Its heart connects to all living things. When it hurts, the forest cries. When it rests, the forest grows." Rayan looked at them with respect. "Will you stay here with me?" The third figure spoke. We do not stay in one place. We move through the mountains, watching over the hidden hearts across the land. But we will return when the mountain calls. The first figure stepped closer and handed him a small stone. It had the same circle symbol carved into it. Keep this with you, the figure said. When the mountain speaks again, it will glow and we will come. Rayan took the stone and nodded. The three watchers turned and walked back into the forest. Their lantern lights faded until the night was dark again. He stood there for a while, feeling the wind on his face. The mountain felt calm now. The stars above were clear and the moonlight shone softly on the roof of the cabin. When he went back inside, he placed the small stone on the table next to the book. He could still feel its faint warmth. The heartbeat below the floor sounded gentle and steady, like the mountain was resting again. Days passed peacefully after that. Rayan fixed more parts of the cabin, planted some vegetables outside, and made a small path to the stream. The townspeople stopped laughing at him. When they saw him in the market, they said he looked happier and stronger. No one knew the real reason behind his calm eyes. One afternoon, while collecting firewood, he found something unusual near the river. A fallen tree had broken apart, and inside its hollow trunk was a glowing seed the size of a pebble. It looked like a tiny version of the crystal under the cabin. He picked it up carefully. The glow was soft and warm. He placed it inside a cloth and brought it home. When night came, the small stone on the table began to glow. The circle symbol shined faintly. Rayan understood that the mountain was speaking again. He took the seed to the underground chamber and placed it near the crystal. The larger crystal pulsed once, and the smaller one stopped glowing, as if it had joined the same rhythm. The book on the table opened by itself upstairs. The wind turned its pages until it stopped on a blank one. Then new words appeared, written in glowing ink. The heart grows. The guardian listens. The watchers smile. Rayan went upstairs and saw the message. He felt peace in his heart. He knew now that the mountain was alive and happy. That night, as he sat near the fire, he thought about how strange life was. Once he was just a hiker looking for quiet. Now he was a guardian of something ancient and powerful. The laughter of the townspeople no longer mattered. He had found purpose in the silence of the mountains. Outside, the forest swayed gently in. The wind and the heartbeat below the floor kept its calm rhythm. The watchers were gone, but their presence still lingered in the air. Rayan smiled softly and said, "Thank you, mountain. I will keep your heart safe." He closed his eyes and listened to the peaceful sound of nature surrounding the cabin. The mountain slept, and so did its new guardian. Many weeks passed peacefully in the mountains. The air grew cooler, and autumn colors began to spread across the valley. The trees around Rayan's cabin turned gold and red. Leaves fell like soft rain on the roof, and the stream below shone under the sunlight. Life had become calm and steady for him. Every morning, Rayan woke early and walked through the forest with a wooden stick in his hand. He checked the stone piles along the trail. Each one still stood tall, untouched. Sometimes he felt the presence of the watchers, quiet but near. When he closed his eyes, he could sense their energy moving with the wind. The mountain had grown peaceful again since the night of the meeting. The heartbeat under the cabin floor was slower now, soft and steady like the rhythm of a sleeping child. Rayan often sat above the chamber and listened. It comforted him. But one evening something changed. The sky turned gray, and thunder rolled across the valley. Heavy rain began to fall. Rayan closed all the windows and sat near the fire. The small stone with the circle symbol lay on the table beside him. It was glowing faintly again. He looked at it carefully and whispered, "Are you calling me?" The glow became stronger. The stone shook slightly, and then the sound of the heartbeat grew louder from below. Rayan stood up, his heart pounding. He took the lantern and opened the trapdoor to the chamber. The air inside was cold, and the crystal's light was no longer calm. It flashed again and again like lightning. The rhythm was uneven. The heartbeat had turned fast and weak, as if the mountain was in pain. Rayan touched the glowing surface and felt it trembling. The warmth that usually comforted him was gone. He whispered, What is happening to you? Then the crystal's light spread across the walls, forming shapes and shadows. Rayan saw the outline of tall mountains, deep valleys, and shining rivers. In the center of the image was a dark crack spreading like a wound. It was in another part of the mountain range far to the east. The vision faded, and only the glow of the crystal remained. Rayan understood. The mountain was showing him another place where its heart was breaking. It needed help again. He packed his bag, took some food, the small glowing stone, and the leather book. Before leaving, he touched the crystal one last time and said, "I will come back. Stay strong." The rain continued as he stepped outside. The path was slippery, but he walked with firm steps. The glowing stone guided him, shining brighter whenever he took the right turn. The forest was silent except for the rain. He walked for hours through the night, across streams and up rocky paths. When he finally stopped to rest under a large tree, he opened the book. New words had appeared on the pages. "Go east to the Valley of Echoes. The second heart is weak. The Watchers will find you there." Rayan closed the book and continued walking. As dawn approached, the rain stopped, and a soft mist covered the forest. Birds began to sing again. The path ahead led to a steep hill covered with moss and fallen branches. Beyond it lay a wide open valley surrounded by dark peaks. He reached the valley by afternoon. The air there was colder. The ground was cracked and dry, and the trees looked old and thin. There was no sound of water or birds. It felt lifeless. In the center of the valley stood a large rock formation with a narrow opening that led underground. The glow from the small stone in his hand became stronger. Rayan knew this was the place. He entered the cave carefully. Inside, the air was heavy and cold. The walls were covered with marks that looked like symbols. Some were the same as the ones carved on the stone piles near his cabin. The deeper he went, the brighter the stone in his hand became. Finally, he reached a chamber where another crystal lay buried in the ground. It was much darker than the one under his cabin. Its light was faint and flickering. The sound of its heartbeat was weak and slow. Rayan kneeled beside it. "You are the second heart," he said softly. He touched the surface, and for a moment, a sharp pain shot through his arm. He did not pull away. The light grew stronger under his hand. He felt the mountain's sadness, like a living thing calling for help. He took the leather book and placed it near the crystal. The pages turned on their own and new words appeared. "You carry the warmth of the first heart. Share it now." Rayan understood what he needed to do. He took the small, glowing stone from his pocket. It pulsed gently in his hand. He placed it on top of the dark crystal. The glow from the small stone flowed downward, spreading like liquid light through the cracks. The entire chamber began to shine. The air filled with a deep sound that shook the ground. The symbols on the walls started to glow. Rayan watched as the light spread in all directions. The dark crystal brightened until it looked alive again. The heartbeat returned, strong and steady. Then a familiar voice spoke behind him. "You have done well, Guardian." He turned and saw the three Watchers standing near the entrance. Their cloaks were dry even though the valley was wet. The first Watcher stepped forward and said, "The second heart breathes again because of you. The mountain grows stronger." Rayan asked, "How many hearts are there?" The Watcher replied, "Many. They sleep under mountains, rivers, and forests. They are the lifeblood of the land. When one weakens, all others feel it. That is why the first crystal called to you." Rayan looked down at the glowing crystal and said, "What will happen now?" The second Watcher said, "Now you are not just a guardian of one place. You are the keeper of the link between the hearts. When they speak, you will hear them. When they suffer, you will feel their pain." Rayan nodded slowly. "I will protect them." The third Watcher said, "You are no longer alone. The mountain chose you because your heart listens. Keep walking, and when the time comes, others will join you." Rayan thanked them, but when he looked up again, the Watchers were gone. Only the light of the crystal remained. He stayed in the valley for 2 more days, building small stone markers around the cave to protect it. The plants near the entrance began to grow again. The air became warmer and birds returned to the trees. The valley was alive once more. When he finally returned to his cabin, everything was as he had left it. The first crystal below the floor glowed brighter than before, as if it knew he had succeeded. The heartbeat was strong and calm. Rayan sat near the fire and opened the book again. New words appeared slowly. 2 hearts now beat as one. The mountain thanks you. Rest until the next call. He smiled and closed the book. Outside, the sky was clear, and the stars looked brighter than ever. The forest around him whispered softly, full of life. He looked toward the mountains in the east and said quietly, "I will be ready when you call again." That night, Rayan dreamed of glowing rivers running through the land and tall mountains breathing under the stars. The watchers stood at the edge of the dream, their cloaks shining like golden mist. One of them said, "Guardians never sleep forever. The world still needs those who listen." Rayan nodded even in his sleep. He had found his purpose. The laughter of the townspeople was now only a memory. They had laughed at the hiker who bought a broken cabin, but that broken place had become the heart of something greater. The mountain slept peacefully, and its guardian watched over it with quiet strength.